started with this training, I'm going to start by asking you to raise your hand if you've ever had the experience of sitting through a lecture or a conversation that was full of complicated jargon that you couldn't understand. Awesome. Everyone's had this experience, right? It's really common. So can I have someone raise their hand and tell me how that experience made them feel? Yeah.
Really dumb.
Really dumb? Absolutely. Yeah, Chris?
I just zoned out and got bored.
Zoning out, absolutely. Feeling stupid, zoning out. Yeah.
Very uncluthed, like I'm not even supposed to be there.
Yeah. It's very exclusive, right? Yeah, Daniela?
It takes away the desire to like want to learn what you're saying.
Yeah, you don't even want to be there. Great. Any others? Yeah, great.
It makes it hard to engage in the class because it's really embarrassing to ask like what every word that they're saying means.
Exactly, right? You can't really get into it because you don't want to ask about every single word. So these are some ways that we've experienced that it can be very excluding to use language that we don't understand. So with that said, we want to start to think about how it would feel for students in the classes that we're teaching if we're using language that they don't understand. So how do you think students might feel if they don't understand the language that we're using? Yeah?
I think they might feel kind of discouraged and just tune out and kind of shut themselves off because they've given up on trying to understand.
Right? Discouraging, tuning out. Yeah, Nora?
If we're talking about a sensitive topic, they might not want to ask what something means. So for example, I've had students like call me up and whisper to me, what does oral sex mean? Because I'm just using this term, but they don't understand what it means and they know that their classmates will laugh at them if they ask.
Absolutely. They don't want to ask questions about what the words mean. How else might it make them feel? It's discouraging. They might be embarrassed to ask questions. How else would students feel if we're using language that they don't understand? Yeah, Victoria.
It might make them feel like they don't have anything in common with us, or like, you know, further alienate them from us.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. It's very alienating. It makes students feel like they don't have anything in common with us. Great. So kind of getting to what Nora was talking about, do you think that students will ask every time that we use language they don't understand? Yeah, no, why not? Yeah, in the back.
It's embarrassing to not know. Yes.
Yeah, it's totally embarrassing to have to ask and to not know what a word means. So why is it important to use language that everyone in the class can understand? Yeah.
So that everyone can like learn the lesson and not have to focus on words they don't know, but just the content.
Great, so everyone can learn the lesson and understand the content. Is there another one up there? Yeah.
Yeah, so that they feel like they can contribute and they don't feel a bit like you start establishing that relationship where like you're saying words they understand, they feel more like they can ask questions or contribute.
Perfect. Yeah, creating an environment where everyone can contribute. So this definition that we're talking about of using language that everyone in the class can understand is student-friendly language. So student-friendly language does not mean dumbing down the curriculum or assuming that high school students can't have rigorous conversations about health topics. But instead, it's thinking about how you use your language so that it's accessible to everyone and so it can enable and excite students instead of intimidating them and excluding them and alienating them, as people have said. So with that, we're going to go to some examples. So can I have someone read the example on the left? Yeah, Strat.
There are many contraception options young people can use, one of which is an intrauterine device, also known as the IUD. The device works to prevent pregnancy by inhibiting sperm from reaching or fertilizing a female's egg.
So why do you think that might be difficult for students to understand?
Because it uses a lot of vocabulary that is above me and students above them.
Absolutely, right? It's vocabulary that's above us, it's above high school students level. So does someone have a suggestion for how we might phrase this content so that we don't dumb it down and we still get the important information across, but so that it's easier to understand? Yeah, Ben.
I remember from previously teaching pregnancy prevention, we intentionally did not use the word contraception because that can throw people off. We just say pregnancy prevention methods or techniques. So that's one word substitute that you could use. Without like explaining what an like intrauterine device is in detail, you could just give a quick definition of something, of where it's implanted and what it does. That might help people understand it.
Great. Does someone want to take a stab at that definition? Giving a simple description of an IUD. Yes, Steve.
An IUD is a little T-shaped device inserted into a woman's uterus that actually creates a physical barrier between the sperm and egg.
That's perfect, right? So we're using words like pregnancy prevention. Go ahead.
That's not, an IUD isn't a physical barrier.
Oh,
yeah.
non-barrier, sorry.
Sorry, that's-
Non-barrier, no, you're right, sorry.
But the word barrier is a good one, right? Because we're replacing the word inhibits, which is very sort of vague, and replacing it with something like barrier that's easier to understand, living out physical barrier. So those are the kinds of word substitutions that we can make that will make language more accessible. So can someone, and thank you for that correction, Laura. Can someone read out the one on the right-hand side? I think that's right. Yeah, Audrey.
Alcohol has many effects on the body. For example, alcohol interferes with the brain's communication pathways. This can affect your gross motor skills. Additionally, these neurologically based disruptions can also impact your mood.
Great. And so why do you think that might be difficult for students to follow?
Just because it has like a lot of big words like gross motor, neurologically, that I feel like students like get tripped up by those words.
Definitely, yeah. So does someone have a suggestion for how we could say this same information in a different way? Yeah.
You could give examples of things like for gross motor skills, like the run past if someone's running or not, like walking.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion. So using examples, what are some other ways? Would anyone rephrase that last sentence? Noah?
Alcohol can change how you feel.
Perfect. Exactly, on point. So it's saying the same thing, but in a much simpler and more accessible way. So these are some ways that we can think about how to change complex language into more accessible language, but still being accurate, right? Because again, student-friendly language does not mean dumbing down what we say or making assumptions about the understanding of the students in the classroom, but it just means using scientific and accurate definitions, but presenting them in a straightforward way. So if you go to the next slide. So in presenting student-friendly language, it's important to define the words that we use and to check for understanding about those definitions, which we'll talk more about. Asking students to provide what they think the definition of the word might be. So first polling the class and having students tell you what they think the definition is. Using synonyms so that everyone can understand what those words mean, right? So we talked about pregnancy prevention method instead of contraception. And then also avoiding acronyms or unnecessary jargon. So we use a lot of acronyms in Peer Health Exchange, but that's not something you want to bring into the classroom. So if you go up in front of a class and say, hi, I'm an HE from PHE and I'm teaching DM3, and no one knows what you're saying, right? Those are great acronyms for us, but they're not good in the classroom. You want to say, I'm a health educator with Peer Health Exchange, and today I'll be talking about making decisions about alcohol and marijuana. So those are the kinds of things we want to do when we're using student-friendly language. So now we're going to give you an opportunity to practice this.
Before we do that, we want to remind you that the idea of student-friendly language is not that you're like reaching to the lowest participating student in the class or trying to like set the bar low. Using student-friendly language helps everyone. You guys probably know if you're sitting through a lecture in class, if your professor is lecturing in a very like casual, colloquial manner, it's going to be a lot more engaging and a lot easier for you to participate and feel excited by the material that they're teaching. So we really encourage you to just think about using student-friendly language whenever possible. In addition, we want to specifically think about English language learners, or ELLs. These are students that English is not their first language. And in the classroom, making a point to use student-friendly language can especially help English language learners and make sure that they are also having the opportunity to keep up with what's going on as you're talking. An additional note on English language learners, if you go into a classroom or when you go into a classroom, it can be really, really helpful to ask a teacher before the class begins if you have any English language learners in the classroom. So you can make sure that they're following along, maybe check in with them during like a think, pair, share activity and see if they have any questions and be prepared to use synonyms with them to make sure that they can keep up with what's going on. And that language barrier is not getting in the way of anything. Are there any questions about that? We'll be talking more about English language learners throughout the year. Okay, great. So now in your volunteer manuals, you have a page called Student Friendly Language. Please turn to that. What page did you say was?
If you find the page number first, please shout it out.
Correct. 78. So you guys are going to have 8 minutes to go through this worksheet with a partner sitting next to you. The goal is to review these statements and transfer them into student-friendly language. Your 8 minutes begin now. Could somebody read out the first example and then tell us what you put down instead? We have a volunteer. Yes. Magna, right?
Yeah, so should I just read or like what I said?
Read both.
Let's analyze the following scenarios in our worksheets. When you read the scenarios in your workbooks, think about the interpersonal dynamics between the characters. So what we said was, let's look at the following scenes in our workbooks. When you read, see how the characters talk to each other.
Great. Thumbs up. Like it? Does anyone have anything different that they put? They want to add? Any other variations they are proud of? Yeah? What's your name?
Madeline.
Madeline.
We said that like usually the characters have names, so we just instead of saying the characters, like I know I'm in DM2 and we have one with like Jaden and Malik, so we probably say their names.
Yeah, absolutely. Being specific with your workshop is always really helpful. All right, great. Second example on your worksheet. Who would like to share with us? Yes, Ariel.
Okay, so the non-example is, we'll now talk through the various means that two people can engage in sexual intercourse. Can anyone remember that from the DM workshop? And we said, we'll now talk about the different ways that two people can have sex. And can anyone remember that from an earlier workshop?
Great. Thumbs up. Anyone have anything they want to add? Yeah.
I would just add that to kind of draw out student responses, we talk about 4 kinds of sex in PhD, so mentioning that would be helpful, then inviting students to share one of them.
Yeah, absolutely. Prompting students and reminding them that they've maybe already learned something is a really great way to keep that language focused on the students. All right, and who would like to do our final example for us? Yes, Sam.
Okay, so the original is in order to determine what action counts to perform, we should evaluate the merits and drawbacks of each decision and function, and generate a final outcome we should ultimately perform. So I'm going to summarize it into 2 questions. Why or why not should Jonathan make this decision? What will his outcome be like?
Awesome. Thumbs up. Everyone heard it? Anyone have anything they want to add? Yeah.
Maybe like when doing the prompting thing again, talking about like maybe not pros and cons, but like talk about like going back to like what we learned in the lesson, like think about the good and bad consequences that might come with each action. Like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Prompting again. That's very good. Did you have something more about something?
I was just gonna say what said about like referencing like the C consequences of the decision making.
Yeah, absolutely. I really liked how you phrased it in questions, because that allows students to use their own language. And like we said, it's like pure health exchange. We want students to be able to interact with each other and teach each other. So students being able to speak about what they're learning in the workshop in their own language is the purest form of student-friendly language. So that was really good. All right, that is the conclusion of our portion, student-friendly language. So you have an exit slip. Please fill that out on this training. We're also going to let you have a little break right now. You need to be back by 4:25.
We have about 10 minutes.